Hello, today we're going to learn how to create assessments and enter student learning outcomes assessment data into eLumen. In order to do that, we got to get to the eLumen webpage first, and one of the easiest ways to do that is to first log into My Hancock, click on the Faculty tab, and then on the right-hand side under Faculty Resources, click on the Learning Outcomes link. When you click on that link, a new web page comes up, and this is the Learning Outcomes website for Hancock College. On the left-hand side, you'll see there are several links that provide lots of information about student learning outcomes here. And for this demonstration, we're going to go straight to the eLumen page, and on the left-hand side, we'll see there's an eLumen link. So let's click on that. Next, that brings up the eLumen page for Hancock College, where there's a description of what eLumen is, drop-in hours to get help over at the TLC on campus, and then additional eLumen resources and training, their professional development opportunities, etc. What we want to do now is click onto the Log into eLumen Here link, and that brings up the login page for eLumen. Your user ID and password for eLumen are the same as those for My Hancock. So let's log in. Once you've logged in, then you'll see there are several, on my display here, there are several boxes across the top that either have Program Coordinator or Member in it. And under each one of those, inside that box, there's also a discipline, physical science or geology, etc. On your particular page, more than likely you have just a box that shows member and the discipline in which you teach. We want to click on that discipline here, and for our purposes, we've created a pseudo discipline here, ABCD department, for the video purposes. Click on that, and what should come up is a listing of all the student learning outcomes that have been written for your course, for the course of interest. And this is a good opportunity to read these over and to check yours to make sure that they are current and accurate. If there are changes that need to be made, then you should contact your student learning outcomes liaison or Jenny Robertson. Okay, now that we've read through the student learning outcomes, we want to create an assessment. Now, we're not going to be creating a test or any other type of assessment as you would in a classroom, but we're going to take your existing assessment that you've already made and enter that into eLumen, and it's easier than it sounds. So click on Create an Assessment, and that brings up this page for New Assessment. We want to give your assessment a name, and for today I'll give this one the name Test. We want to leave this as direct evidence or direct method, and then you should click on the Show the Optional Elements link, because this brings up then a pull-down menu where you can give your assessment tool a description or some type, and I'm going to give mine a midterm exam listing. Here we can also put a description of the assessment. For instance, maybe it's a multiple choice exam or essay exam or some other description. Under required document submission, we'll just leave that as no. And then be sure to save this. Okay, now we've created the assessment, right? All you've done is taken the test or whatever assessment you made for your course, and you've just very basically entered it into eLumen. You may edit or delete that assessment at this point. But next, what we want to do is we want to link some student learning outcomes, or just one, to that assessment. And in order to do that, we want to click on Name SLOs for this assessment. And this brings up two columns here. One says Available for Linking, and it lists all the student learning outcomes for that course. And then over on the right-hand side, an empty column that says Linked. Well, what we want to do is we want to link one or more of your SLOs to your assessment. So over here on the left, you'll see there's a blue word that says Link. You want to click on that for whichever SLO that you've chosen to assess. and click on Link. Over on the right-hand side now, that student learning outcome has been moved from the left to the right-hand column. If you decide, oh, I made a mistake and I want to undo that, you just click on Unlink and it returns it back to the other column. Okay, now let's click on that. I want to link this particular slow to my assessment. And once you've clicked on Link, it is now linked, and then we could go back over here to the left under Return to what I was doing and click on that. So now we still have this page here, which shows the midterm exam test, lists the student learning outcome that's linked to that assessment. You still may edit or delete your assessment at this point. But what we want to do now is we want to score students, and this is where we'll be entering the data. So click on that, and a list of all of the students that are registered in that course come up. And on the right-hand side, there are a series of columns with radio buttons in them. If you hover over each one of those radio buttons with the mouse, then a box comes up that describes the meaning of that particular column. And the NA column is labeled as Student Cannot Be Assessed. This column may be used for purposes of in case you have students who didn't show up for a test or did not turn in a particular assessment, but they're still registered in the course. Number 3 means that a score of number 3 means that they've exceeded the standards. A score of number 2 means they've met the standards, and a score of 1 means that they are below standard. The 0, as you'll see, says do not use this level for any student, even those who are not attending class but are still on the roster, etc. We will not be using 0 at all in eLumen. Okay, now we want to enter the data, so you do so by clicking one of the radio buttons. And when you do, you'll notice very quickly a little word, a green word comes up and it says saving. And we'll do that for the second one. And what that means is that once you've entered this data, it automatically saves it for you. And so let's just enter 1 here. You may want to press save and enter analysis, but you don't have to, and I suggest we skip that particular step at the moment and go to return to what I was doing over here on the left. Click on that. So now we have a listing of the midterm exam and test. Here's the slow, once again, that we've assessed. And I want you to notice down here that you are no longer able to edit or delete that assessment tool. And this is because you've entered scores for that assessment. If you wish to delete that assessment tool, then you'll have to go into the Score Students page again. And then here where it says Clear All Scores, you'll click on that. And of course, click OK. Then click on Return to what I was doing. And notice now you may edit or delete that assessment tool. Okay. I'm going to go back and re-enter the data quickly. And then click on Return to what I was doing. Okay, so these are all pre-assessment actions as listed here. What we want to look at now are the post-assessment actions. So click on that button there. And under midterm exam test, it also lists the number of slows assessed, the number of expected scores, the number of actual scores, and then a summary. If you want to go back to the Score Students page, then you click on the Score Students from here. What we want to look at now is under what would you like to do? We want to review these links here. If you click on Review Per Student Assessment Results for this action, then it brings up a listing of all the students and their scores. Okay, you may want to display this as a PDF or report it or download the report data. Okay, once you've looked at that, let's click on Return to Course Section View. The next button down, or the next listing, is Review Aggregated Assessment Data, and this will be fairly useful. You want to now look at this. It has the course, the slow that was being assessed, and the listing of all the scores received by those number of students. So in this case here, I had 3 students total, and each one earned a score of either 3, 2, or 1. NS in this particular case stands for the NA, where you entered the student scores. I like to look at this as percentages, so you may click on Show Percentages, and that converts everything to percentages here. So 33 1/3% received a 1 or a 2 or a 3 respectively for that slow. Down here, then, these three listings here show the data for the same slows for all my sections for this course. That's the first one. And this would come up, this will be useful if you're teaching more than one section of the same course and you're using the same assessment tool for each of those courses. And this is where that data would all be aggregated if it was entered into eLumen. Here, for the same slows, for all sections for this course, for this term, this is useful if there's more than one instructor teaching the same course section, or the same course. And all of that data, if it's entered into eLumen, would be aggregated here. And then for the same slows for all the courses this term, this is useful if one of your slows is being used in more than one course, more than one course being different than the one you're teaching. Okay, so once you've looked at this data, you can display it as a PDF and save it to your computer or print it out. Now let's click on Return to Course Section View. And still under Post-Assessment Actions, we want to look at Analyze Assessments and Report Next Steps. Once you've clicked that, then you come to this page which shows the Section Improvement Plan. And there's a series of 3 boxes here. Each one has a different question. These questions about your course data comes directly from the Program Review Annual Update form. And that makes this very convenient because once you've entered descriptions or answers to these questions, then you can either print this out as a PDF or cut and paste directly into your Program Review update form. Okay, now once you've entered some type of answers to each of these questions, then click on Save. And that brings us back to this page here, and for the most part, you're done. You've entered data for your slow assessment into eLumen and attached that to an assessment tool. Congratulations. Now that you're done, don't forget to log off.